Fate dealt Audrey Hepburn a twisted hand, from starving during World War II to losing multiple pregnancies. But just when she met her Prince Charming and captured her dream life, an unforeseen tragedy ripped it away. To this day, Audrey Hepburn defines grace, elegance, and humility. The talented actress dominated the silver screen in the 1950s and 60s with roles that made her an enduring icon. Born in Brussels on May 4th, 1929, Audrey Rustin was a far cry away from the glittering world of Hollywood. In the beginning, she lived a rootless existence, with her family moving incessantly for her father's work. As they flitted from London to Arnhem and beyond, little Audrey learned 6 languages. As privileged as her life undoubtedly was, her family had a dark side. Audrey's parents wholeheartedly believed in the growing Nazi regime and even travelled to Germany to attend marches and show their support. In fact, her father Joseph was so deeply entrenched in his prejudiced beliefs, he did the unthinkable. In 1935, he abandoned Audrey and her mother, moving to London where he could devote more time to his fascist pursuits. In looking back on this chapter of her life, Audrey confessed that her father's disappearing act was the most traumatic event of her life. When World War II finally descended, Audrey's life experienced the greatest upheaval of all. Thinking she'd be safe in the Netherlands, her parents sent her away. Although it seemed like the perfect place to hunker down and wait out the war, it quickly became one of the most dangerous places in Europe. In 1940, 10-year-old Audrey witnessed the German invasion of Holland. To avoid being identified as English, she changed her name to Edda van Heemstra. However, despite her best efforts to lay low, the following years were fraught with fear. In 1942, a violent and pivotal moment saw Audrey's 2 uncles ripped from their homes, taken hostage, and killed. From then on, Audrey found herself swept up in the underground Dutch resistance. She delivered papers and even hid messages in the soles of her shoes, carrying them to the Allies. But her most generous act of all was also one of her greatest passions: dancing. Audrey dreamed of becoming a prima ballerina, and having studied dance at boarding school, she took to the stage and entertained the Dutch resistance. In 1944, the Dutch experienced a famine. The Germans blocked the transport of food and supplies, and soon starvation and malnutrition darkened Audrey's doorway. Her family had no choice but to make bread out of tulip bulbs. After years of fear and uncertainty, World War II finally came to a close in 1945, and Audrey found herself liberated. Audrey still harboured her dream of becoming a ballerina, and so when she moved to London with a ballet scholarship, she began her training at Ballet Rambert. There was just one problem. Audrey had lost too many years to World War II, and by the time she arrived at the school, it became obvious that the other dancers were far more advanced. Audrey had to face the facts. She was never going to be a prima ballerina. But she wasn't quite ready to throw in the towel. She found another way to pursue her passion: through acting. Right from the get-go, she never wanted to be an actress, but the gigs helped put food on the table, and the musical parts afforded her a small slice of the dancing she craved. While filming a scene for Monte Carlo Baby in the Hotel de Paris, Audrey caught the eye of the illustrious writer and actress Colette.
I know you think I'm only a baby.
Colette got straight to the point and asked Audrey if she'd like the lead role in Gigi on Broadway. In a single month, the stars aligned for Audrey. She got 2 big breaks, one on Broadway and one in Hollywood. William Wyler had seen a screen test of Audrey in action and was captivated. He had a new film in the works, Roman Holiday, and immediately envisioned her for the lead role. He initially had every intention of casting Elizabeth Taylor. However, after seeing Audrey, he completely changed his mind. Audrey's co-star Gregory Peck also knew that this promising newcomer was destined for greatness, and insisted that she get equal billing. Her leading man was right. Audrey Hepburn filmed the right movie at the right time, and for audiences, she was a breath of fresh air. In Roman Holiday, she was the embodiment of a new ideal of beauty, one that was easier to relate to than the otherworldly bombshells like Grace Kelly and Marilyn Monroe. Audrey wasn't curvaceous or polished to perfection. Her beauty was singular, yet accessible. Right from the beginning, she had the makings of a style icon. Audrey's character as Princess Anne in Roman Holiday had great dualities and even highlighted her boyish qualities, celebrating a cropped hairstyle, thick eyebrows, and a slight figure. By 1954, Cecil Beaton, the renowned fashion photographer, had already dubbed her the public embodiment of our new feminine ideal. With only one film under her belt, the public expectations were mounting. For Audrey, the world of Hollywood was startlingly new, and yet, right out of the gates, she won an Academy Award for Best Actress. Audrey's next film paired her with two of Hollywood's most beloved leading men, Humphrey Bogart and William Holden. However, only one of them truly liked her. Poor Audrey had to grapple with Bogart's chilly reception of her, no doubt influenced by the fact that he'd wanted his own famous wife, Lauren Bacall, to play the role of Sabrina. William Holden, on the other hand, took one look at his doe-eyed co-star and was absolutely starstruck. Under the director's nose, Audrey and Holden embarked on an affair, but there was more than one problem keeping these two from a happily ever after. William Holden had a plethora of personal problems, including his affinity for drink, not to mention the fact that he already had a wife. But even with all his baggage, Holden couldn't control his love for Audrey. He wanted to marry her, and even proposed. But Audrey turned him down. According to rumours, her desire to start a family destroyed all chances of her ever marrying William Holden. He'd had a vasectomy, making their union an impossibility in Audrey's mind. Clearly, the doomed fling hit Holden much harder than Audrey. After all, this was her grand introduction to the world of stardom, and one disappointment couldn't mar the excitement of the opportunities opening up to her. Roman Holiday made Audrey Hepburn a star, and yet only 3 days after her Best Actress win, she also won a Tony Award for her Broadway performance in Ondine. Suddenly, everyone wanted to interview her, and everyone wanted her for their next project. After Gregory Peck returned from working with Audrey on Roman Holiday, he ran straight to his best friend, Mel Ferrer, to sing her praises. When Audrey and Ferrer met, sparks began to fly. From the outside looking in, they might have seemed like an unusual couple. Audrey was 24, while Ferrer already had 2 ex-wives and 4 children. They were at different chapters in their lives, and yet they shared undeniable compatibility. As Audrey's career took off, she fell deeper and deeper in love with her new beau. By September of 1954, the two of them decided to marry in a relatively secret ceremony in Switzerland. But her overflowing happiness was only a precursor for heartbreak. Not long after her wedding, Audrey discovered that she was pregnant with her first child. Sadly, she suffered a devastating miscarriage in 1955. 4 years later, she was elated to learn that she was once again expecting. But in a cruel twist of fate, a freak accident ripped this happiness away. In 1959, while filming The Unforgiven, she was thrown from her horse and broke her back. Suited up in a back brace and dressed in special costumes to hide her injury, she managed to power through and finish the film. In the aftermath of this traumatic accident, she suffered her second miscarriage.
He's gone. Prepare.
Despite these losses, Audrey finally welcomed her first child on July 17th, 1960, Sean Hepburn Ferrer. Although she'd stepped into her new role as a mother, Audrey's new responsibility didn't detract from her star power. The very next year, she took on her most iconic role yet. In 1961, Audrey faced the daunting task of embodying the extroverted character Holly Golightly in the film adaptation of Truman Capote's Breakfast at Tiffany's. This was not the casting Capote originally had in mind. In fact, the writer wanted Marilyn Monroe. But when Monroe learned that the character in Breakfast at Tiffany's was a lady of the evening, she turned her back on the role for the sake of her reputation. When Capote discovered that Audrey had been cast instead of his dream girl, he was furious. Whenever Capote was on set, Audrey felt incredibly self-conscious. She too felt that she'd been miscast, and the stress of playing the role caused the already slim actress to shed even more weight. As an introvert herself, the role of Holly Golightly was wildly out of her comfort zone. Everything about Audrey's look in Breakfast at Tiffany's has continued to define elegance to this day. From Givenchy's little black dress to the large sunglasses and high chignon, the whole look has remained one of the most classic fashion moments in American cinema. In her private life, Audrey's relationship to her physical appearance was rather surprising. While the rest of the world hoisted her up on a pedestal of beauty, she herself didn't always love the way she looked. The constant admiration didn't protect her from a wide range of insecurities that crept up on her. But while Audrey considered herself to be an everyday woman, there was one person who considered her to be the greatest muse of his life. Audrey first met the fashion designer Hubert de Givenchy in preparation for Sabrina, although at first he thought he was designing for Katharine Hepburn. After Audrey wore her first Givenchy dress in Sabrina, there was no turning back. Out of this collaboration sprung a professional romance that defined both actor and designer. In fact, Audrey's magnetic quality is a mixture of her personality and the powerful lines of her posture, the clothes she wore, but also the way she carried herself. Audrey Hepburn's career was a full-blown success. Even as time wore on, her popularity amongst audiences held steady. But when the cameras stopped rolling, she continued to battle demons from her past, long-buried insecurities that crept into her marriage and threatened to destroy it. For exclusive perks like early access to new videos, priority replies to your comments, and to have your say on future content, consider becoming a Factinate member. On top of that, your support helps keep the channel going. Click the link in the description for more details. For her entire life, Audrey was haunted by her father's abandonment of her, and many critics believed that she sought out father figures in her own romantic relationships. Certainly her husband Mel Ferrer controlled and steered her career with an authoritative hand. In fact, little by little, her love for Ferrer began to wane and diminish, and soon she wasn't happy at all. After 14 years of marriage, they divorced. Rumours of his domineering nature and bad temper were likely reasons for Audrey's discontent, as well as the alleged affairs on both sides. But not even the disintegration of her marriage was as shocking as Audrey's next move. In 1967, right at the peak of her success, she decided to step away from acting to focus on her family. One of her main anxieties was her son, Sean. After wanting a child for so long, her work kept dragging her farther away from him. With her own traumatic childhood at the back of her mind, Audrey was determined to be the best mother possible. The same year Audrey left Ferrer, she met her next husband, Italian psychiatrist Andrea Dotti, and by 1970 they were married, living in Rome, and had a son, Luca. In the beginning, Audrey seemed to have found her fairy tale ending, but her dreams were quickly dashed. Doughty had a sordid duality. On one hand, he was an upstanding, generous doctor, but on the other, he was a serial adulterer. One Italian paparazzo caught his infidelities on camera, and most shockingly, there were over 200 different women he'd stepped out with. Audrey made her comeback with the relatively successful Robin and Marion opposite Sean Connery. But it wasn't until a film called Bloodline that Audrey indulged in a forbidden romance. Hurt time and time again by her husband's cheating, a very sad Audrey connected with her very sad co-star Ben Gazzara. Together, these two actors drowned their sorrows. In the end, both Audrey's affair with Gazzara and her disappointing marriage came to an end. After briefly rearing her head in Hollywood, the heartbroken actress wanted nothing more than a place to rest and centre herself. And so, once again, the ageing star ran away from the spotlight. She moved from Rome to Switzerland, where she took up residence in the restored farmhouse called La Paisible, meaning quietness in French. Here she could stroll down the streets without fear. Unlike New York or Rome, she was just another woman in Switzerland. Always at the top of every filmmaker's list, Audrey turned down countless roles. Robert Wolders was the widow of another famous actress, Merle Oberon. When she died, she'd left Wolders all of her worldly possessions, and so he decided to auction off her jewellery for a good cause. His act of generosity led him straight to his next great partnership, Audrey Hepburn. Climbing out of the darkness of her ruined marriage, she realised that Wolders truly was the upstanding, selfless lover she'd been dreaming of. But just as she settled into this new life, an unexpected offer turned everything on its head. When Audrey's cousin invited her to a concert for UNICEF, she ended up speaking to the audience, sharing her own harrowing experience as a child in the war. Little did she know the head of UNICEF was present. After her speech, he approached her with an offer she couldn't refuse. He wanted her to become a full-time ambassador for UNICEF. All hopes of a quiet retirement came to an end, but this time, the incessant travelling bore a much deeper meaning. In the 1960s, Audrey realised that she wanted to find her father, the man whose absence had haunted her for so long. Through the Red Cross, she managed to track him down. Joseph Rustin had settled in Dublin. He hadn't seen his daughter since 1939, the day he sent her off to the Netherlands. But when Audrey finally came face to face with him, she was in for an excruciating disappointment. Audrey had hoped that a reunion with her father would bring the warmth and love she'd always needed. Instead, she met with a cold and disconnected man who didn't share the same enthusiasm. Although devastated, Audrey decided to forgive him and even supported him financially until his death. In 1992, upon returning to Switzerland from a trip to Somalia with UNICEF, Audrey began to feel an alarming pain in her abdomen. A scan revealed the devastating truth. She had a rare cancer. This particular disease had been festering for years, and the outlook wasn't promising. Audrey faced her illness head-on, undergoing both surgery and chemotherapy in Los Angeles, but it became clear that she would never recover. For her last Christmas, her friend Givenchy arranged for a private jet to take her back to Switzerland. Her final days were as peaceful as they could be. With hospice care on hand, Audrey sometimes walked in her beloved garden. Audrey Hepburn died in her sleep on January 20th, 1993, at the age of 63. Although she never wanted to be an actress, her memory and accolades have built her a legacy that will never be forgotten. Today, she is considered one of the greatest actresses of all time, and is one of the rare few to have won an EGOT, that is, an Emmy, a Grammy, an Oscar, and a Tony Award. Through her films, her style, and her humanitarian work, Audrey was always so much more than met the eye. If you enjoyed this Factinate video, give it a thumbs up and subscribe for more incredible stories. If you want a say in who we cover next, join our membership program through the link in the description for exclusive perks. Your support means everything to us. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.